And good morning, Thailand. Second last day of the week, Thursday. Thank you for joining us. Oh, it's making noise. Stop making noise, computer. We've got Jay on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Tim.
Jay's going to be monitoring your comments. Make sure you behave yourself. And we'll read out some of your comments. Good morning from California, says Jay. We've got Julian there. We've got Kev. Dirty old man's always there. Don't you have something better to do, dirty old man?
I'm going to start calling him Dom, D-O-M.
Well, that's, better than dirty old man. We're talking about vaccines today with a real vaccinologist. We're adding some new sandboxes to the mix. We've got some new restrictions and closures in Bangkok. And there's also been very low enthusiasm for Samui Plus. We'll check those numbers as well. Now, today we've got an interview with Professor Helen Petousis Harris. She's a vaccinologist and director of the Vaccine Data Link Research Group at the University of Auckland. So I pre-recorded that yesterday, but we'll be speaking to Helen today. A very good talker. Just to show you what she has been doing, here's a bit of her TED talk from last year. So let's check we've got that interview with Helen a bit later. But Jay, we do need to check the COVID numbers for the day. Okay. I think we've gone up or down or sideways. You're checking. Now you know.
Checking for the thing.
We've got 13,655 cases, 87 deaths. 545 of those cases are from prisons, which, as you mentioned earlier in the week, the numbers were going up quite sharply.
Yes, especially for prison inmates. At least today it's half the number that it was yesterday, but sure. It's significantly risen from the past weeks. It had gone down for a bit to around 150, but there's suddenly a spike in the last couple of days at least.
We've added some 2,000 or 3,000 cases from prisons in the last week. Now, there have been some more restrictions in Bangkok. Here's a list of the things that have closed down in the dark red zones. Sports fields, golf courses, public parks, exhibition centres, art galleries, libraries, museums, childcare centres, beauty salons and barbers, damn it, tattoo parlours, that's ruined my day, and swimming pools. That's certainly going to change a bit of the what's already a fairly dull life in Bangkok and the other 12 provinces with those extra closures. Also, interprovincial travel through the red and dark zones, the paperwork to fill in as you go through the checkpoints, this has changed as well. So we've put a link under the description under this video. If you are wanting to travel, and the government's saying please don't, but if you have to, you need to go through this checklist. It'll generate a QR code, and then you can show that QR code when you go through the checkpoint, which will make things a lot easier. It's in Thai and English, so that's under the description. Also, we've got another tiger.
We do.
Have a look at this. So Jason's going to show you the picture. This is from Paul Mozer. He sent it in, and it's the best Thai restaurant in Southampton in the UK, according to Paul. So if there are any other tigers out there, please send them in and we'll show them off.
We've gone international. So we went originally from Phuket, then we had Daniel Thaiger in Bangkok, then we had Tiger Bar in Pattaya, and now we've gone all the way to England and Southampton with a Tiger restaurant. I wonder what other countries. I mean, I'd never heard of Tiger until I knew about the news agency, but now it seems like tigers everywhere.
Well, if you've got a tiger out there, and you snap a photo and send it in, and the prize is absolutely nothing except the joy of sharing it with everybody else. Now, good news for the Sandbox program is they are going to, amidst all the craziness that's happening in all these dark red zones in like the sort of centre part of Thailand and also the deep south, they are going to persist with the sandboxes. So we've now got the potential for a Krabi sandbox and a Phang Na.
The Andaman Sandbox.
Yeah, so in other words, the provinces directly to the east and the north of Phuket. And they say, so you stay in Phuket for seven days,
yep.
And then you can travel to these other provinces. The problem is, of course, now once we're starting to leak the sandboxes, which were islands in the past, now we're moving on to the mainland.
Yeah, it's fairly easy to travel from Phuket to Phang Nga, but I'm guessing once this actually starts, the checkpoints will be a lot more stricter.
Yeah, well, as soon as you cross over from the bridge from Phuket, you are in Phang Nga province. Then
But then that would also create a lot of traffic, wouldn't it?
potentially, we're just not going to know. But they're going to start that on August the 1st. Speaking of sandboxes, Samui Plus is basically another sandbox which they're operating there in the Gulf Islands, which includes Koh Phangan and Koh Tao. How many people arrived in Samui yesterday as part of the Samui Plus program?
Well, there were a total of 2.
Yeah, so
two people on 2 planes. So I was wondering, did they just decide to have both of them on one, or did they decide to, put one on one and one on the other? I mean, it is sad. It's sad when you think about it. I would definitely want more people to travel to Samui, to Phuket. Definitely want more tourists. But the fact of
What's the barrier? Why are people not going to... They're travelling to Phuket. We've got some 10,000 people now who have travelled to Phuket as part of the Phuket Sandbox.
Yes.
But we're talking about less than 20 who have travelled to Samui.
Mm-hmm.
What's the barrier? Is it the going through Bangkok, the changing the flights? Is it the cost of the Bangkok Airways flight?
It could be. It's probably more expensive. I would think it's more expensive to travel to Samui than Phuket. I don't have the details of how much it would cost, but I'm guessing maybe people are doing a lot more research now. Samui has had a stronger effect, and maybe a lot more things are closed in Samui, and it might not be as open as Phuket. That could potentially be one of the reasons. Phuket is maybe more attractive to tourists right now.
Well, I suppose there's more to do. It's bigger.
It also did open before the Samui Plus, so maybe people have pre-arranged plans and have already booked their tickets to Phuket. Perhaps they didn't even know about Samui until it was too late. So if you could travel to Phuket a lot earlier than Samui, then maybe that's why they're coming here.
All right, plenty more to talk about. We'll get to some of your comments. There's one from Jay. But what we'll do is throw Jason into complete confusion, have a quick break now, and come back and talk with some of our other talking points before we get into our main interview today with Associate Professor Helen Petousis Harris. That's coming up on Good Morning Thailand. And you're on Good Morning Thailand, our Thursday edition with me and Jay. Anything from our viewers?
Not yet. If you do have any questions, please type question before you write, because a lot of you are having a conversation with each other, so it makes it slightly difficult for me to see the question. So please type question before.
I saw a good one from Jay, who said, has there been any developments in the government getting more Thais and expats vaccinated? Well, I mean, the vaccination rollout is sort of slightly lumpy, but they are trying quite quickly to get more supplies of vaccines into the country of a greater variety. There are more people being vaccinated. We could give you a daily vaccination report, but it sort of goes up and down. It sort of spiked around about 2 weeks ago. It has slowed down a little bit, but we might do some special information, provide some special information about the current rollout in Thailand, reminding people that the people in those sandbox areas are sort of being vaccinated as a priority so that they can invite international guests back into the country. The MotoGP, do you follow that?
I don't. I'm an F1 fan.
All right, so the MotoGP has been quite popular. I think they've run it 3 or 4 years now up in Buriram.
Yes. It's quite big in Buriram, yes.
In the northeast of Thailand, and they do love it up there.
But it's been cancelled this year.
Cancelled, sadly. It was going to be in October from the 15th to the 17th, but the Grand Prix that was going to be held at the Chang International Circuit in Buriram has been cancelled for this year. Bad news for GP fans in Thailand. And this is another one of political correctness gone wrong. In Australia, the state of Queensland and New South Wales have softened their tone when it comes to the language of reporting shark attacks. So what have they done? Well, now sharks apparently don't attack. From now on, it'll be reported as a bite, not an attack. And when they do bite humans, it'll be referred to as an encounter or an incident. If you get half your leg chopped off, it won't feel much like an encounter or an incident. And if they chop enough of you off, then are you going to be slightly dead? Or I'm not sure how they're going to report it. But interesting that Australia, who do have probably more shark bites than any other country in the world each year. I think it's like 1 or 2. It's not a lot.
Yeah.
I think, but when people think of they're going to go to Australia, they think, oh, sharks. It's not quite as bad as that. I mean, I've swum in many of the waters in the south of Australia. Probably seen a few sharks while I'm sailing. Never really encountered any while I'm swimming, and very few people do.
Well, I've only seen a shark in an aquarium, but it's about time. I mean, I'm a bit surprised at why they chose this time to, change the words and how to appropriately talk about it. We recently had Shark Week, perhaps because of that. But I mean, it's slightly strange because I feel like maybe people might make fun of this rather than actually take it seriously, because sharks are misunderstood creatures, and when we're surfing, we are in their territory, and
we're in their dining room.
Yeah.
We certainly are. Finally, before we get to our interview with the Associate Professor, Helen update, a Stephanie update. So Stephanie sent us a photo yesterday. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Hi, Tim. I was released from ALQ prison this morning. That was yesterday. Just went down to the beach for a swim and a mango smoothie before going to Rawai. I've rented a nice condo for the next 6 weeks. So congratulations to Stephanie. I should also say that we've had 2 more emails from people who were on a flight, an Etihad flight, who have now been forced to go into quarantine for 14 days. So we've been trying to contact them and get them onto the program. At the moment, they have not agreed to come onto the program, but we'll see what we can do to find out about their experience. But if you are coming to Thailand at the moment, there is a possibility, a small possibility, that you may be caught up with somebody who may have tested positive. In these cases, the person tested positive after the 5th day, and they've been forced to do quarantine at their cost for 14 days.
I have a quick update from our viewers who kept reminding us that Phuket, about the Phuket and Samui situation, that you can fly directly into Phuket, so it's a no-brainer to choose Phuket over Samui, and Phuket has a lot to offer, so thank you for that, because I've received about 50 messages just about that. I have another question here from Rob, who asks, have the new restrictions already been implemented in Bangkok, or do they start on Friday?
They start on Friday. Thank you very much for the reminder. I neglected to mention, they start this Friday. And Shaneo Traveller says, feeling for the Thailand tourism sector. Shaneo, one of our members, thank you for contributing there. And certainly the tourist sector in Thailand is struggling to reopen. Baby steps at the moment, but it's a bit of a hard road to hoe right now. Right, let's run. No, look, I'll tell you what, we might have another quick break.
Okay. And
then we'll come back with an interview with the Associate Professor. But for now, you are watching Good Morning Thailand. It's Thursday. Back right after this.
It's time to join the conversation. Thaiger Talk is our forum where you can share your thoughts and comments about all the news stories, as well as just about anything happening in Thailand. Just scroll down under any Thaiger story, click on Thaiger Talk, register, and you're in. It's time to join Thailand's fastest scoring forum. So jump in and be part of the Thaiger Talk conversation.
All right, so you're on Good Morning Thailand and coming up with our interview in just a moment.
Before we start into the interview, I have a quick question from Albert, who asks, when are you going to give more background information about the photos on the wall? Now, sorry that we haven't actually mentioned it since the first 2 weeks about what exactly is behind us, but I had an idea. I had a quick idea today that the more Thaiger pictures we get, we'll start putting them on the wall so that we have Thaiger restaurants, Thaiger news, so that could be something fun between the viewers and us. But now to more interesting topics.
Yeah, we've got this interview, which I pre-recorded yesterday, recorded it in two parts. It's with the Associate Professor Helen Petousis Harris, and she's a vaccinologist and the Director of the Vaccine Data Link and Research Group at the University of Auckland. And we'll have the other part tomorrow, but here's the first part of that interview. So Helen, very interesting that last year you did a TED Talk in November and you were looking towards a situation where these new vaccines that were coming out at the time, you were predicting that they were going to get a bit of a bad rap from the anti-vaxxers and the vaccine hesitant. And it seems that you had a good crystal ball at the time, because pretty much that's come true.
I think it's a bit of history repeating, and I think it's a cycle that we see that does repeat over and over again when we introduce a new vaccine. Of course, we're now seeing it on a mammoth scale.
So a lot of the countries, they're showing that they've got a lot of people who are now vaccinated, but they've still got rising rates of COVID. So how do these vaccines actually work? What are they meant to do?
Well, primarily they're meant to stop you getting sick and going to hospital, and of course preventing deaths. And what they also do, to a greater or lesser extent, is prevent you from becoming infected and being able to transmit it. But when we talk about countries that have got high vaccine coverage now, it's all relative. It's actually nowhere near high enough to stop a lot of disease circulating, and it's only certain sectors of the population that have been highly vaccinated, like, for example, the elderly in the UK.
So the vaccines all work in slightly different ways, but the intention of all the vaccines, I understand, is to basically prevent you from getting seriously ill. But you can still catch COVID if you've been vaccinated?
Indeed, you can. And depending on the vaccine and depending on the variant, you could be quite well protected against becoming infected at all, or not so well. And I think that sort of changes quite rapidly as we see these new variants. But I think we were seeing some of the mRNA vaccines being able to prevent transmission or infection and transmission in the orders of sort of 80%. So that's actually pretty good.
So if I've been fully vaccinated, I could still catch COVID. I could still pass it on to somebody else.
Absolutely. It's not a magic bullet. No vaccine is, and there are always some people that will not be protected. And what we're seeing is that even with these variants, the vaccines are still pretty good at preventing severe disease, hospitalizations and death. But as we move down the severity, we're seeing perhaps a reduced effectiveness. So I guess at the moment we're still holding quite well for those. I guess the burden on hospitals, of course, deaths and things like that. But it is a moving feast. It's changing all the time.
So a lot of people who call themselves the vaccine hesitant, what are their main problems? What are they worried about? I mean, there was the thing about the autism. I think that's sort of been thrown in the bin now and debunked. But what is their main resistance to getting vaccinated?
It usually comes down, I guess, the main reason is concerns about safety. And I guess the idea that the risks from the vaccine are greater than the risks posed by the disease. So it really comes down to a sort of a fundamental risk-benefit analyses in people's minds.
One interesting dynamic, Associate Professor, about this particular virus is that it's no virus in history has ever been so followed, so counted, so linked to data. And people can sort of twist that data any way they like. Do you think the amount of publicity and the amount of data that's been publicised has worked for the scientists or against them?
Oh, both.
Yeah.
It's been an infodemic in terms of the amount of information and the speed at which it's produced and published, but also along with that, we have the misinfodemic where some of it, as you say, is becoming twisted. And unfortunately, I guess what we have today that we didn't have in the past is platforms for this misinformation to be disseminated quite easily.
So what do you, as a scientist, what do you do when you're on calls like this? And I'm sure you do it quite often. What do you say to people when they start throwing these questions at you and the conspiracy theories at you? How do the scientists sort of battle back to try and win this info war?
I think we struggle. I think it's really hard because there's no one way or one conversation that you can have that's going to, I guess, work for everybody. Some people, even though their ultimate decision is perhaps that they don't want to have the vaccine, that's for very different reasons. And so we can help address the misinformation. We can give more information, for example, fill the knowledge gap. We can correct information that's wrong, which is really important, correcting the misinformation. But that's going to work for some people, but that's not going to work for everybody. And then you start getting into needing different ways to communicate, but also the establishment of trust. And I think at the core of it is and you see a lot of the problems coming with that, people don't trust I guess the messenger, the people with the messages. And if the messages are only coming from government or the messages are only coming from perhaps scientists that people don't trust, then that's not going to resonate. So you're going to have to adapt the messenger as well as the messages.
Persist, persist, persist.
And don't let up.
Helen, without sort of going through the top 10 vaccines, can we just talk about a bit of the difference between, say, these mRNA vaccines and some of the older style vaccines like AstraZeneca and Sinovac, Sinopharm, which come from China? What is the key difference with these mRNA vaccines and why are they more effective?
I guess they're the newest kids on the block. I think the platforms that are used by, for example, AstraZeneca and the Janssen vaccines, they're also pretty recent. The developments in those viral vector platforms, and then we have all the other kind of approaches, the more traditional approaches as well. So the thing that sets, I guess, both of them really apart is that they get your body to make the vaccine itself, as opposed to actually introducing the part of the fragment of the virus or something that your body responds to. In this case, they're sending in the instructions and you make it yourself. And I think what this enables is actually a very, very nice immune response. And it can allow developers to create these vaccines that push all the right buttons that are going to get an immune response that's going to be optimized for this particular coronavirus.
So with the mRNA vaccines, are we injecting nanobots that Bill Gates is going to track? I can't believe I'm asking that question.
Those are way too big to fit into the needle. I can tell you, you need a much bigger needle to get little nanobots in, I think.
Sure.
No, it's actually, I guess, in a way, one of the purest vaccines, in the sense that you're getting a nano, they're nanoparticles, but they're just little tiny spheres of fat or lipid, and inside there are the instructions, which is just a little tiny piece of a nucleic acid or messenger RNA.
I suppose the thing that really categorises these mRNA vaccines to send around the world is that they seem to be needed to be transported at such cold temperatures. It does make that a little bit more complicated. But so far, they seem to be showing very high efficacy rates.
It's remarkable. I guess they were the first cabs off the rank, and they set a very, very high bar. I mean, those initial studies indicated 95% efficacy against the disease. That's remarkable, and it also makes it a pretty tough act to follow. I guess the expectations were not that high.
Sure.
So they're quite something. And also I think over the last few months we've seen those requirements for storage ease a little bit as more's learned about their stability. So we have a little bit more room, I guess, to work with them.
All right. Well, tomorrow we're going to have a talk about the situation with these variants and sort of a bit of a look at the regional problems. So for today, we'll say farewell, and we look forward to speaking to you again tomorrow.
Look forward to it.
And we'll have the second part of that interview in tomorrow's program with the Associate Professor from the University of Auckland. And sorry about the sound at the front. We fix it up as soon as we can. We'll chop that bit out when we load it up for YouTube. All right, some comments and questions, Jay.
I have a question for you to start off. How come all the other experts were live from Grammar Officer Krupke?
Well, the only reason we could only get Helen at the time was 3 o'clock yesterday, Thai time, was the only time she's available. She does quite a few interviews, and she's got her work at the University of Auckland to attend to as well, so it just wasn't a suitable time. And a lot of our guests, as we sort of try and widen the topics and the type of guests we have on the program, we inevitably will have to compromise and have to pre-record some of those interviews.
Sure. Here's another question. Two questions in one from Dun Roman and Sick Puppy, who asks, Thailand is heading the same way as India. Hospitals full, running out of oxygen, people starving, people dying in the streets, at home from COVID.
Well, I don't think at the moment it's quite as bad as India, and we hope we don't get to that stage. Thailand's hospital system is a bit more developed than India's. I believe they're also more ready, but they've got more field hospitals. They're trying to make empty schools available. I don't think they'll run out of beds. And I do think that the draconian measures they're now taking in lockdowns and restrictions, whether you think they're a good option long term, will start to have some effect on the numbers. I don't think we'll get up to that projected 32,000 number of daily cases, which was predicted by a Mahadon University report earlier this week. But look, it's a fair question. I don't think we're in that sort of desperate situation that they were in India at the moment. Let's hope we don't get there.
Yep. Another question from the Crag 777. What is the main resistance to getting vaccinated? Well, I don't think there's a very strong resistance in Thailand.
Right.
It's the lack of vaccines or the availability of them, rather. However, it's not the same for other countries. People have stronger opinions and voice their opinions in places like America, not so much here.
Grammar Officer Krupke followed up. His question said, then why didn't you let us send our questions in? I did a post on YouTube yesterday saying if you do have some questions, please send them in. So sorry that you didn't get that message, but we did. And we didn't really get to a lot of the questions because I wanted the Associate Professor to sort of attack some of the basic issues, but we'll get more into those tomorrow. And we'll also have a talk to her, maybe live in the future. She's a good talker, a good communicator, a real professional, and we appreciated her time.
Yep. I have another question here from, actually a statement rather, from Sick Puppy, who's concluded everything and said that COVID is the new herpes. It'll be with us forever.
Well, great. It's not the new herpes. Obviously, it's a quite different virus, but we understand what you're saying. And I think the way it's heading, that rather than just being a pandemic, it may head into a situation in the next decade where it becomes endemic, and it's something we're just going to have to cope with forever. The idea of trying to do these lockdowns, trying to restrict it, is to try and do what they were able to do with SARS and MERS, whereby you restrict the virus's opportunity to replicate, and eventually it just fades away. But at the moment, there's a lot of countries just opening up, and we've got new variants. We don't know what those new variants are going to do, so we're in a very dangerous phase, I believe, with COVID-19. Certainly, we don't want it to become endemic. We don't want it to be just another annual flu where we just got to cope with sick people all the time. And to stay healthy, you might have to have an annual booster. But that's the situation we're facing at the moment.
Another question from Julian, who states that Sinovac is not always recognized in some countries. If I received Sinovac in Thailand, it is not recognized here in Saudi Arabia or the Middle East. Maybe in the future, it will not be allowed to work. So I have Sinovac. I have both the jabs of Sinovac, and that's the only vaccine I could have got. I didn't really have any other choice. However, you got AstraZeneca because Tim had it a little later than me, and he was allowed to have.
I'm special.
Yeah, so Sinovac isn't recognized in quite a few countries in the Middle East.
Yeah, this whole recognition of vaccines in different countries, it's going to be a bit of a moving feast for a while, I believe. And as people start travelling again, there's going to have to be this constant updates of vaccine certificates and more recognition. And I think other countries, because the WHO has now recognised Sinovac, I believe that other countries will start accepting it as a valid vaccine. But with all these new variants, it's back to plate number 1 to start it spinning again. Keep all those plates spinning. Complicated situation.
Yep. I have another comment here from Greg, who is actually talking to the viewers, saying that, interesting, just had the opportunity to listen to a real expert and watch all the conspiracy idiots in the conversation spout BS rather than listen to the real information. Now, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and I mean,
I'll tell you what, when you say that, I don't think people are entitled to have an opinion about something that
is a fact.
There can be established facts. People, I mean, a lot of these people here, for whatever reason, we seem to have a lot of people who believe that these vaccines are somehow dangerous or more dangerous than COVID, or they have a lot of other conspiracies. And I've actually had to delete some of the comments because they're simply wrong. They're mischievous, they're misinformation. And it's our job, I suppose, part of our job, to try and direct proper, verified information in your direction. So when you say it's okay to have an opinion, I think that's okay as long as you leave your opinion in your own home and amongst your friends and don't try and portray it as fact when it's not.
Fair enough. I have a quick question here from LG, who says, why is it out of control in Indonesia? Why wouldn't this happen in Thailand? Now, we're hoping it doesn't happen in Thailand. If the situation, actually recently, when you compared the COVID figures per capita, Thailand was not that far behind Indonesia.
No, it was about the same. If you want to compare the numbers in Southeast Asia per capita, Malaysia is quite a long way ahead of everybody else, then Indonesia, then Thailand. That's the way it is at the moment. Singapore currently has it under control. Myanmar, no one's got any idea. Vietnam has also got a rising number of cases, and sadly the Delta variant seems to be prevalent there, and they're starting to see some new deaths as well.
Yeah, and we are currently on a trend of increasing in COVID-related infections. Currently we're at our highest, above 13,000. We're hoping it doesn't increase.
Grammar Officer Krupke is keen to debate me about this. I get it. It says, science is supposed to be an ongoing debate. Did you ever learn that? Well, at the end of the day, yes, we're in new territory here, but I'm going to trust the science and the vaccinologists and the people who work with this all day, every day. And as we know from the 20th century, vaccines were the greatest and the most successful public health invention. And we need to back the science. And we know that the more people that get vaccinated and the quicker they get vaccinated, the sooner we'll be able to get to a situation where we can get back to some sort of normal life. But the more people don't get vaccinated, the more they resist it, for whatever reasons, we're going to be dragging this thing out, and we're not going to be locking down these new variants. And that's the most dangerous situation we could be in. Yep. That is my opinion, by the way, but it's backed by all the work we've been doing to try and get accurate, positive information about what's going on.
Yep. Quick statement here from Laura, who says, can't you ask questions and be skeptical and still get the vaccine? Yes, you can, Laura.
All right, with that, we thank you for watching. We've got more of the Associate Professor tomorrow, and obviously more hate coming from the comments section, but that's why it's there, and we're happy to read out your comments, although we will block comments that try and portray themselves as facts or are just violent towards us and the program, or other commenters as well. Thank you very much to Jason for pressing the buttons. Thank you all, whether you agree or disagree with us, for watching today. Thank you to Jay for another shirt. I wasn't going to mention the shirts, but I just did. I'm sorry. And we'll look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.